All right. Welcome everyone to another Friday afternoon concept art session here as we make Terrorarium. Jeffrey Flores here at Stitch Media. It's been a couple weeks, maybe actually 3 weeks since my last streaming session. As you see what you have up on screen, I'm actually still doing some concept work for the bosses that will appear in this game. This is potentially one of them. I think today I'm probably gonna just go through some of the concepts that I've done in the past week or so, and probably just continue working on this one. Yeah, so that's where we're at, just to get you guys caught up if you've been following along for the past few weeks. Yeah, what I've been working on has been coming up with a few iterations of bosses that we think actually work well for the game. And if I bring up some of the ideas, I'm trying to remember where I last left off, but even for myself, this is what I was working on maybe about a couple weeks ago, which was I did about 40 or so just rough outlines of characters, silhouettes with minimal detail, just so I could come up with certain shapes that feel right, and without spending too much time on fully fleshing out a character, just give us the general sense of like what does this kind of shape and character can they be, without actually spending too much time on that. So if I'll lead you through some of these, I did quite a few of them. So some of the earliest ones I did, they actually were a little bit too anthropomorphic, like a little too, head, two arms, 2 feet type of silhouettes. And the initial response was, we need to kind of make them a little more plant-like. So what we have, as you see, I think this is a good page where things start to change a bit, was bringing back more foliage and aspects that refer to trees or plants or moss, or plant life. So even though some of them might still have the heads and arms, the shapes themselves kind of moved away from being more like a human figure or some type of animal with plant features into more of a plant that's a little more sentient. So that is where I kind of went, and then you kind of see these. Then another bit of things we notice as I continued to work on these was that they were becoming a little too cute. Again, since the art style that we've kind of settled on is this somewhat colorful, low poly art style for the game, that also lends itself towards being more toy-like and cute. And so we want to bring it back, especially since the name itself is Terrorarium, to bring back these monsters and make them a little more edgy, as it were. So here you notice, you'll see me bringing figures that are a little more unsettling, whether it be the one on the top left, which I will actually show you in a bit, with multiple mouths and growths happening all over the legs, to the one in the, let's say, the middle row farthest to the right, just a hooded figure, or it looks like a hooded figure, that's a little more, just hiding things underneath its kind of robes. And then to the bottom, the very last one, which is just like a kid figurine with, hands growing out of its chest, which, you know, very unsettling, especially if it's when you depict children or children-like figures. So that definitely kind of expanded upon making things in tonally a little darker. Um, and I think this was the last set of pages I did. You know, there's definitely some things here that are definitely recognizable as, you know, like a dinosaur. I mean, that's a cute figurine, but I'm not sure if that flies as like more plant life. Then another one in the middle, you know, kind of one of those, you know, goat-like figures. Um, and then I think on this one we settled on expanding upon the one on the bottom left, which is a little more like a formation of tentacles or roots. Um, so that one I will pull up in a second. Here we go. So, just to show you some of the work I did when I took these pieces. So I'll start with, the first one I did was actually this root one. And what I did was, what I did here was I took the actual black and white drawing, ink drawing. I copied it all into a new layer. I blew it up and then kind of reworked it into as an inverse. Here, I'll bring it to the top so you can see. So originally that was in the inverse of this. It was like a black ink drawing. I inverted it so that I could trace over it, just get the general shapes without being too hold into its actual outlines. And then so what it did was I reworked it, slightly giving more clarity into the line work. Brought in some of the highlights, shadows, and then so that was where I kind of left it, just a squirming mass of roots and vines. So one thing I did notice afterwards was, you know, although I think this is an interesting shape, and once it's modeled, I'm sure this wriggling mass would make for an interesting creature. One thing that's kind of missing from this is still the leaves, the foliage, the other part to make it look a little more plant-like. I think on its own it looks dangerous enough. However, I'm still working on it in a way of like, how can I add things that make it that bring back that plant feeling rather than relying totally on its the roots or tentacles to make it look like a plant, a living plant. So that's what I was kind of struggling with. I didn't get too far on that. Like how much more can I do to it to actually get that? Like how large should these leaves be? Should I have flowers on it so there's some kind of balance between it being this darker creature with you know, fun little flowers going out of its head. Just quickly change my brush. You know, for it to have a few plants or flowers coming over here growing out, you know, whether it be brightly colored flowers, would that create some weird dynamic between, you know, the bottom half of this creature and the top half of this creature being very lively and colorful and kind of attractive looking, versus the bottom half being this kind of grotesque kind of creature. So this one, again, before I even get to the modeling stage, I still have to rework it a bit. Um, are is the three mouths that you can see right now, is that apparent enough in the design? Does that need to be emphasized? Like, especially when this gets made into a creature in game use, will you be even able to see these kind of these teeth? That's another design consideration, especially since we're looking right now at a three-quarter view uh, camera angle within the game. So these are all considerations that, yeah, once it gets to that stage when it's all set to be modeled, um, I might do another pass at this just to flesh out all those little details that right now don't as as much matter, but they definitely will once we are ready to put this into a game. So that's one of them that I was working on. The next one was this one, which I kind of mentioned before. This taller, tree-looking guy with a bunch of like growths coming out of it. Um, I don't remember the name of the actual plant that I based this on, uh, but it's out there where it kind of. I just saw the image of this on somewhere on the net, and I was like, oh my god, that just looks so kind of creepy. Where it's just a whole bunch of mouths coming out of the tree. Kind of look like clams. So same thing. I kind of took the silhouette I that I roughly made, and then turned that into a more fleshed out version uh, of it. Some things here that I don't like is the placement of the branch slash arm on the top left. I mean, I do want to get away from uh, making it so what do you call it, symmetrical, so that it looks like, oh, that's his right arm, left arm. I do want to kind of maintain the kind of aspect of it's part of a tree. There's somewhat of a symmetry there, but it's also kind of growing at random moments. So who knows what my next pass will be when this may or may not turn into one of the bosses within the game. What kind of adjustments are needed there? Another consideration for this one I'll have is just like, well, in the game, how does this guy become, a boss that you actually have to defeat in some manner? Is it one of those puzzle-based um, ones where you just catch it with a few puzzles that you don't necessarily have to defeat the boss in a way, or do you? Like, what does this guy do um, that makes him an obstacle? So right now you're just kind of looking at him as a whole, and you're like, oh, that's an interesting silhouette. I could see how that could be interesting game, but what does the figure do to indicate what his abilities are? So that's another thing that when it comes time, I'll probably have to do another pass, talk to the game designer, say, okay, this is what we need this guy to do, and therefore I gotta kind of match it in the visuals so that the player gets a sense of like what to expect. Um, so that was the second one I worked on. Uh, this one, this one has quite a bit of progression to it. I'm gonna try and find the original sketch of it. Here we go. So this is this one in the bottom right corner, the one with all the heads. This was the actual silhouette that we chose to work from. And what I did here was, again, the same with the rest. I took the silhouette, put on a new layer, blew it up a bit so I can get more detail in there. But this one took a I took a different approach on as to how I would work at it. Instead of just starting to trace that original silhouette, I decided to do different versions of it and actually rework it and put different spins on uh, what exactly its final form should be. With the first two, I took the silhouette and basically just kind of said, okay, this is good. I'll just go right into detail work. With this one, I said, well, I have this guy. Is it really good enough? What things need to change? What things should be done to make this guy a little more interesting? Um, so, the first thing I did was, okay, well, let's play with the shape of the tree, make that more interesting. What else about the tree am I gonna do? Well, instead of faces, because one thing we talked about was, do we always want to have eyes and mouths on these figures? You know, if they're plants, do they always need this recognizable face? How do we kind of break that apart? Okay, how about we either just use eyes or just mouths separately, or you know, instead of always having this recognizable face. So this one had a few faces on it, and I just was like, okay, how can we break that up? So this original idea, I think the big selling point was multiple features, um, creatures, making this symbiotic kind of larger creature. Um, and so I evolved that one into a sketch like this, fleshing out the shape of the tree, um, making the branches itself a little more dynamic and fluid, um, making the upper leaves a little less uh, poofy, and then change the heads into just like groupings of eyeballs. Um, that was this is the next iteration of it. Here, again, it was like, you know what, this is very much like like one of those, I forget what it's called, miniature trees. I'm forgetting the name of it. Uh, but then I was like, okay, how can we play with that and change it around a bit? Well, I figured, okay, what's a different shape? Make it bottom heavy instead of top heavy. And once I got to this stage, I was like, well, this is starting to look like one of those, you know, roots. Uh, you know, make a tree whose texture more looks like uh, more like a giant root. So that's what's playing with this one when I was making the texture, was like making the trunk really thick, even the roots at the bottom also really thick. So that evolved again. And I was like, okay, now let's go back and forth between the two. Let's keep the texture. Let's try the heads again. This time with another pass at the leaves. Would this be an interesting shape? Um, I mean, the head detail here is, you know, it's not bad, but so the version of it. But then we get to this point. If I can find it, this one, which is like, okay, let me pull it apart. Instead of roots, because I feel like everything I'm doing is, you know, a set of vines or a tree. What if we make it slightly different? As in, this is this is something that blossomed. This is something that came out of some, you know, opened up. Uh, that doesn't really have a typical set of roots. So I came here, and so I got to this point, and then I did the line work on the main figure portion of it. I gave it this kind of line textured, pinstriped kind of look to it, um, and turned the branches into something a little more bulbous. The eyes now, instead of bulging out, were a little more pulled within the figure itself. And then the root system, I turned into a set of leaves that kind of unwrapped from it. Uh, do I think it's more successful than the original idea? I mean, there's definitely an evolution from this one to this. I'm sorry, to this. But I, I don't know if it's stronger, makes for a stronger character in the end. I think there's definitely some aspects I do like of it. You know, the leaves I like that it's changed from this tree to something that's blossomed. Um, the downside of going this way is that I kind of felt that we've lost uh, what I think was the initial strongest point to the creature, were these multiple figures that made up a larger creature. And so, even though the latest one does have a set of eyes, which is it's a set of eyes, it's not necessarily like something that I find as cool as something that's more like a set of creatures. This one looks like one figure with a bunch of eyes rather than multiple creatures in a single object. So that's where this one left off. Again, um, I wanted to move on. We're still at the stage where we're working on our demo. These bosses won't be worked on for another few weeks at the earliest. So I do have time to move shift away. So I kind of said, okay, you know what? First try, nice try. This is okay, but I would like to move on and try something else. So, but so I started doing some levels in Unity, getting the final flesh out look there. But then we had a power outage just a couple days ago, so I instead went back to drawing when because I can work on the tablet, and even if there's no power. And so I started working on a guy like this. This was another one of those original silhouette sketches, and uh, this one we thought, it's a nice little take on our Mugu, who are also fungus, but this is like a big boss type guy. And how can I make just the shape of itself just has a bit of character. His gaze, his eyes, just like kind of slightly goofy looking. He does have that the present belly button like the movie do, although I think on this one I might change it up. But just like it's just the silhouette of this is just interesting. So uh, this one I figured, okay, let me take a crack at it while I'm sitting in a dark office with no power. Um, so this is what I actually ended up doing. Let me put the layers. So for this one, I actually just said, okay, let me try something else. Like I usually have this default go-to, and I think most people do, of like what they think, what their general style is. And for myself, growing up with comic books, it's always been draw without lines and fill it in nice clean line work and then color it in after. Um, yeah, and even going to a fine art school and painting paintings. Um, my I, and then shifting over digitally, where I do have the power just to paint like with actual paint brushes. I never quite got what I feel is just good at rendering uh, just with color itself and not really using line work to break down the shapes. So this was a pass at it. It was like, okay, let me just use textures. Let me just, instead of using the airbrush pen. So that's what I started doing when I started working on these. Uh, so what I'm doing now is just kind of pulling up some other reference material. Um, I think in this time around, I actually might go and do some. I'm gonna continue working on this guy, and occasionally look at what the initial concept was, so I get the feel of it again. So I'm going to continue working on that. Um, so here I'm just kind of referencing my initial drawings, see you know, what were the initial shapes, what did I like about it. Okay, there's a bit of correction there. We get some nice shading in. what I'm doing now, maybe not too much. It's getting, light and shadow in screw effect. Seeing if I can really achieve this heightened sense of volume. Sorry for being a little quiet. It just seems interesting over here. What I'm not doing is kind of like, I guess I could do this. Is going as far as putting on some texture on the bottom. Let's see if I find the grass. Long grass? Mulch. This sounds good. Mulch. So I'm going to expand upon some of the color here, just the background. It's not too important, but I kind of do like isolating the figure a bit. Here's one thing I don't want to do is use tilt the pencil or the Apple Pencil to get the broader part of the edge rather than something using the fine tip always. oh, catch, didn't catch those text messages. Probably should turn off notifications while I'm streaming. Not that I know how to. It's okay for now. Checking in on the original reference. Seeing that. Okay, let's click back. And then says tripping part. Finally, to get this to make it look like it's going to the other end. I don't like that one. Check them on the right layer. So right now what I'm struggling to do is make it look like on the far end of his cap he has some things hanging down from it. Best way to put it. Get that effect. And here's the thing, like the way I did it is that he's lit from underneath and inside the cap, which means this should also be lit because that is facing the inside. Not sure if that works, but it is. Where do I want the ambient light to be directed and coming from? So we're now getting some highlights on. Bigger texture, bigger brush. Turn down opacity. Something like that might work. Make sure that kind of falls through. Still want to get this figure out some, but looking to figure out how to capture these kind of these stripes on his cap without actually making it look like actual stripes. Thinking what kind of brush would achieve that? And how would I do? That doesn't do it at all. I have such a hard time trying to capture that kind of texture. You know what? Easy part. I could do more holes in his cap. Make it look like some parts of art have been like eaten away. I can do that. Take this there and let's get it there. Let's see what I think can work. Okay. So right now I just want to hide parts of it. So what I'm doing now is trying to make it look like some bit of the cap was eaten away, and now we're seeing some of the bits from the other side of it. I think that kind of works. You know, so being a little bit of a non-destructive by using a mask rather than just erasing that layer. And then going underneath and gotta use layers. And gonna continue with that. So I think that's kind of working. Or possibly not. So knowing where to make these kind of strokes. So keep it looking like it's falling through. And still erasing these bits. That works. sides. There we go. Now it looks like it's been chopped up. What can I tackle next? Right now, oh, I think I want to go back and on a new layer. See if this one's clear. Gonna do those kind of holes or dots like I mentioned. Pick a brush with a bit of texture. Pick a color. Man, what brush is that? That is. So, going back to my original sketch, I see it looks like this. And I want to capture these little kind of bumps and lumps on top of this. So these kind of are supposed to be more like shadows. Back to my texture brush I originally used, but I'm using a shadow, a darker brush. Anyways. So let's see how something like this looks. Super. I need a dark color. Doesn't look great. I don't like this layer at all. Straight delete it. I don't know, it's kind of like looking at, what do I think? A hole? Maybe do something. One of these is just a straight up hole. I think that's best achieved by going back on the mask layer. Creating that hole. And the layer beneath it, painting in some strokes. So we see the light come through. And because we see those strokes, I gotta actually delete some of these. Erase it. And then go back in one more time. Make that highlight. Get that outline. thing is good. Cool. I think the next thing I want to do is actually add some leaves to this guy. Here it kind of looks like feathers kind of growing out the top. I guess it kind of looks like a feather in his cap, but not meant to be. Meant to be leaves, and no, mushrooms don't have leaves. I'm trying to think of what else would work here. What would work better at this time to put on this creature? Because I feel like the cap itself is very dominating, and you need something else to disperse your attention from it. And you know, having a set of leaves coming out of here or there, you know, or maybe the back side of it, just to draw the attention away a bit from the cap itself, is needed because it's such a big flat area. Alternately, you know, wood creating, you know, patterns on it also disperse your attention, because that helps too. Just trying to think of what else we could use this character. Something maybe add in, you know, something like that. I like drawing this dude like this.
I think it's because it surprised me so much. Because like I like word comics for like what it is, just like humor to like draw like nothing really think.
I don't know what I'm doing at this point. It's just kind of
And you're like, oh, this is gonna be like pretty like silly. Like it was silly, but it definitely it surprised me so much.
creating
No, yeah, he's
shapes and definition to, you know, this little object, this guy that I was working on. I don't know. I don't know where to proceed with this guy. I think I kind of haven't quite figured him out, because just like talking about one of the other guys is like, what should happen? What kind of abilities should he have, or what do we think he can do just based on his design alone? If all he has right now is a giant head and, you know, some undefined arm, what exactly does he do? Does he throw things? Does he emit things? Does he scamper around because he has these kind of finger tentacle legs? What's under his cap? Why is that important that it's so large? So it's gonna be one of those things of going back, talking to the design team and the game design team, and saying, what do we need? What kind of gameplay are we going to use with and against this guy? We have a whole bunch of kind of potential abilities for these bosses kind of written out. I'm just not sure which one this one would fit right now. Oh, another message comes through. Can't get rid of them fast enough. Yeah. Just trying to think of, like, let me look up mushrooms again, because I definitely needs more detail. I'm not sure exactly how I want to approach it. Man, I have to be really on my pay attention to make sure you guys don't kind of catch all my text messages coming through. I need to disable that off my iPad. Here's the thing about mushrooms, they don't really have a lot of things growing on their caps. On the outside, it is. I mean, they come in a lot of different shapes, but they're all very interesting on the... Oh my god. So many text messages. How do I stop that? You know what? Bear with me, guys. Sorry, technical difficulties. There we go. Now, those won't be popping up. Sorry about that. It's just an honest thing. So actually, I'm gonna go back to that later. Because, while I'm not sure if I like, you know, drawing attention to the bottom half, I think there's a lot to be enhanced bottom. Looking at, well, if these are arms, so this is just me kind of reworking him right now. Maybe we don't shy away from making this, you know, a creature with arms, a head, and kind of feet, because that would be a little too anthropomorphic, but kind of, you know, relish that, and really kind of go in and say, yeah, he has arms. He's a mushroom with arms. It's a bit different, right? Well, okay, let's work with that. Let's see how we can make that interesting. And so, what would be a good shape? So I already got a few more minutes. So would something like this be? More interesting. Some random branches actually give them a set of, you know, fingers to work with. Some cartoonishly large hands, something like that. I don't know if, because again, one of the reasons why we went through the whole process of actually doing the original black and white silhouettes is coming across an interesting silhouette. Looking at a shape that says, oh, that would make an interesting character. Just by looking at the outline of it, it comes across something strong, and you get a good sense immediately off the bat of like, ooh, you know, what is this character all about? So the original silhouette of this guy was definitely, you know, the giant cap, and also the weird shape to his body, with like the head, what is a neck, and then the teardrop shape of his body. The branches were kind of thrown on, even though, you know, mushrooms don't have branches. But again, you know, without arms, it simply becomes, well, what does this guy do? And again, it's one of those things of we're going to have to find out later, you know, what abilities does this guy have? But from a visual standpoint, is it interesting enough? Does it need um, to have like little holes where it spouts off, you know, maybe fungus? Does it emit anything? Does it throw anything? Does it shuffle around? Is this a slow moving guy? So all those kind of things have to be taken into consideration. But you know, does it have enough character? What if I were to give him two giant hands also? What would he look like? Is that something that's interesting? Something like that. I'm not so sure. So yeah, this has been one of those weird sessions where just like, working on a creature that I already kind of had, kind of fleshing him out a bit, but didn't quite know where to take him further, because I think as a whole the visuals of him is pretty interesting, but he's just not there yet. As in, is he an interesting creature? Does his design alone look like the player would know what potentially he could do? Does design alone give us the ability to implement any kind of ability for himself? Like, does he just swing his head around and that's it and kind of walk around? So even though the character I think is kind of has a cool starting point, and I think even just the illustration style that I can approach it with is something that's fun and interesting, and I think I might do that a couple more times rather than the cleaner comic book style of illustrating. This time around, you know, I think there's still more to be had with this guy before he's tossed away. Because I think there's still a lot of potential, and I think having a creature that is kind of like the Mugus themselves, so it's just kind of like, is this a evil, you know, twin species to the Mugu? I think that adds something to it. The idea of like all the other bosses are just kind of like plants that look vastly different than any of the Mugu, by having one kind of boss that is very Sam Keith, one of my favorites too. And just one of my favorite books of his was the Max and Friends that came after the Max. Was also a really good one, good read. And I'm not sure if everybody knows it, but Sam Keith was the original artist on Sandman, Neil Gaiman's Sandman, at least for the first issue. I have to go hunt down those MTV cartoons of the Max. I have a legit Max figure? Oh my god. If you do like Sam Keith, I would suggest searching out his book he did after, or maybe just parallel to the Max. I think it's something called like Girls something. I'm not sure if it has any of the characters from the Max world, but I just remember that one being just as good as the Max itself. So anyways, just past 4 o'clock here, which is just the 1 hour point. Hope you guys enjoyed what I had to show off over the past, you know, getting caught up on what I've done the past couple weeks. Next week, I'll probably have a couple more designs to show off, or maybe stream some world building from inside Unity. So that's it for me here working on Terrarium. Join again next Friday at 3 o'clock, and it was nice having you alongside. Oh, going back to my comments for women, not sure if that's what it was called. I think it had girl in the title. Anyways, good talking to y'all. Thanks for joining along, and I will see y'all next week. All right, thanks. See you guys.